Is D&D finally ready to give fans the Dragonlance setting and TV series they've been asking for?
It's finally happening!
Before we dive into a huge new reveal from Dungeons & Dragons, why not take a second to hit those like and subscribe buttons to help us keep these videos coming? Even just taking a second to hit that like button really helps, and we really appreciate it. And then, let's talk some Dragonlance. Dragonlance is one of D&D's most iconic settings, and home to dozens of novels and adventure modules that spawned an entire generation of D&D fans. But recently, despite briefly returning in an incredibly underwhelming and frankly poorly thought out adventure/board game that largely gathered dust on game store shelves, the relationship between D&D and Dragonlance has been incredibly rocky. Actor Joe Manganiello, a true Dragonlance superfan and close friend of creators Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, even talked with us about his issues with D&D and how they refused to sell him the rights to Dragonlance, despite having no apparent future plans for that iconic.
The way that Dragonlance was handled last year, the module that they released, that was not discussed with Margaret, Tracy, nor I, that failed board game that they released with it. Dragonlance is not a property that they are interested in developing further currently. And you know, that everyone who read the script, there was like the biggest fantasy literary agent in town read it and said these are his words, not mine. He said it was the best fantasy pilot he's read since the original Game of Thrones. And I also offered to buy it. I offered to buy Dragonlance. You know, I was talking to people with funds, with money, to try to get it and separate it, just so that I could get the option and take it out on the town.
And that's a no-go too.
No, they are not interested in developing Dragonlance currently.
Joe has been very upfront about his desire to create a Dragonlance TV series, which is a project he's been talking about and working on for around a decade at this point. But given his feelings towards previous D&D management and the fact that they refused to part with the rights to Dragonlance, it seemed like that dream was forever out of reach for both Joe and authors Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, who share his vision of a Dragonlance coming to our screens. But a recent photo shared by the new head of Dungeons & Dragons, Dan Ayub, has suddenly made the possibility of a new, full Dragonlance setting, and maybe even that Dragonlance TV show, very, very real. Ayub shared a photo of himself with actor Joe Manganiello, who of course was wearing his Dragonlance t-shirt, along with Dragonlance creators Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman at Wizards of the Coast HQ, with the caption, "When I took over D&D, I had some very specific folks I wanted to bring back to the table. Today I had the honor of welcoming these folks back home. Amazing things ahead." So now that the creators of Dragonlance and the man who has been spearheading the push for a Dragonlance TV series for years are finally back at the table with Wizards of the Coast, the possibilities are truly exciting. It definitely feels like we could get an actual Dragonlance campaign setting, with an actual world guide and player's guide, instead of a half-baked adventure with a strange, expensive board game no one was asking for tacked onto it like we got back in 5th edition, and the fact that it includes Joe Manganiello, who has largely been absent from D&D promotions and videos since his appearance in the D&D Direct in 2023 and the company refusing to sell him the rights to Dragonlance, gives us real hope that the Dragonlance series, be it live action or even animated, may actually become a real possibility under this new D&D leadership if they're bringing Joe back to the table. But at the very least, Dragonlance is returning to D&D in this new 2024 rules era, and if the quote amazing things Dan Ayub has planned include new Dragonlance sourcebooks, adventures, and maybe even that TV show, suddenly the future is starting to look pretty bright for D&D. So what do you think? Are you excited for some new Dragonlance sourcebooks and maybe even a Dragonlance TV show to finally happen? Let us know down in the comments, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.